Welcome students. In the last class we have started discussion on fundamental laws of heat transfer, and we basically want to express all these fundamental laws in terms of control volume. Now, to write the fundamental laws in terms of control volume, fundamental laws with respect to control volume. Control volume. We have seen what is Reynolds transport theorem, because the Reynolds transport theorem helps us to write the fundamental laws in terms of control volume, because the fundamental laws that we are used to with are basically for the system and we want to write in terms of control volume. So in Reynolds transport theorem we have seen it is basically the rate of change of property, rate of change of some property, and that is equal to rate of change of property with respect to control volume CV BCV plus the property, the rate of property that is going out of the control volume. If you consider this as a control volume, say this is the control surface, then some property that is going out of the control volume through this control surface, and some property is coming into the control volume through this control surface. So that is the adjusting term. So if beta is the rate of the property per unit mass into density into V dot eta cap is the unit vector if you consider a small area into it, and you just consider that AO or the out. AO is the total area through which that mass is going out, minus integration of beta rho V dot eta dA, integration over the control surface throughout the area through which the fluid is coming in, or the rate of property that is coming in with the mass. So this integration is given over the area through which it is coming in, and this integration is over area which is coming out. So this is what is the Reynolds transport theorem. Now using this we can write the all the conservation laws that we have seen, like conservation of mass, conservation of momentum or the Newton's law, and the conservation of energy or the first law of thermodynamics. So let us consider first the conservation of mass. If we write conservation of mass, for that what is this property? The property is basically the mass of the system. Okay, so B is mass of the system. So what is beta? So beta is mass divided by mass, so beta is 1. So now if you put this B as the mass, if you put this B as the mass, then what will be there in the left hand side? In the left hand side it is the rate of change of mass of the system, and in the right hand side it is del T of the mass of the system. Okay, so that mass of the system you can write in this way. Let us consider this is a control volume, and within that control volume you just consider there is a small volume, say dV. Then what is the mass of that small volume? if you consider the density is rho, then the small mass is basically rho into dv, right? And so what will be the total mass? So the total mass is basically integration of that. Okay, so if you integration over the whole control volume, if you integration over the whole control volume, then this quantity is nothing but the total mass within the control volume. Okay, so this is the first term. Then what is the adjusting term? The adjusting term is the mass that is going out, the rate of mass that is going out through the control surface, that is simply integration. Beta is 1, so rho v. Now this you see this v dot eta cap means what? If you consider a very small surface area here, dA, right, and suppose this is the direction of v, say the normal to the area is eta cap, then v dot eta cap, this quantity is nothing but the normal component of velocity. Okay, this v dot eta cap is nothing but the normal component of this velocity. Okay, vn. So either you can write v dot eta cap, or you can simply write that the normal component of velocity, so vn. Okay, so rho into vn into, and what you have to do, you have to integrate over the area, and this area is basically the outer area. Okay, so this integration will be over the control surface, basically over which area? The area through which basically mass is going out, and a negative term will be there, and that negative term is simply rho vn dA, but now it is control surface through which the mass is coming in, ai. Okay, so this is what is the adjusting term. So this is the Reynolds transport theorem we can write if we consider that extensive property is mass. Now what is the conservation of mass for the system? We know that the mass of the system is constant. So if we apply the conservation of mass for the system, then this left hand portion, that means this portion is equal to 0 by conservation of mass, by conservation of mass for system. Okay, so the conservation of mass then for a control volume will be what? Is the right hand portion is equal to 0. Okay, so this is what is the form of the conservation of mass. Now if you see, now I think you will be able to relate the equation, that exactly the same equation is written here. You see that unsteady part is there, that the rate of change of mass within the control volume. Then if you remember, at this point plus the mass that is going out, that portion is there, and minus the rate of mass that is coming in the control volume, that was there, and the whole thing was equal to 0. So if you take these two terms in the left hand side, then you will find that the coming in portion will be positive. Here you see that rho into the normal component Vn, which is basically, I have told you that V dot eta cap dAi. That means the integration is done over the inlet area, this control surface over the inlet area only. And here you see the out term, if you come if you take it in the left hand side, it will become now the negative. Okay, so this is integrated over the outer surface area, that means the area through which the mass is going out of the system. So this is the form of the conservation of mass for the control volume. I think the equation, this particular form is clear, and how we get this particular form from our known conservation of mass, that mass of the system is constant. Because mass of the system is constant is the conservation law for the system. Using the Reynolds transport theorem, we have converted that form into conservation of mass for the control volume, and for the control volume, conservation of mass looks like this form. Okay, so now let us write some of the special kind of form. So let us take first this form 3. What is there? It is compressible unsteady flow. If the situation is for compressible and unsteady flow, so compressible flow means here basically it is possible that the density can change. I am telling it in a loosely sense that compressible means that its density can change, whereas incompressible means a special case of incompressible flow is that its density is constant. You can think right now in that form. I am not going into the most exhaustive way the definition of compressible and incompressible. As we will go forward, then we will discuss it in more involved way, but right now you just remember that compressible means that its density may change. So in that way, if you think, so here you can see you cannot take out this row of this integration. So the form for the compressible and unsteady flow means that with respect to time, the properties of the control volume may change. Okay, so that is what is the unsteady flow. Properties means it can be flow parameters, it can be properties like pressure, velocity, mass. These are the things. So here you can see since it is unsteady, so you cannot say that this whole quantity will be 0, because only in case of a steady flow the quantity will not be dependent on time, and this quantity can be considered 0. But here it is unsteady, so this term will be intact. And this is the basically the equation that you can see. The whole equation that you can see is basically true for the compressible unsteady flow. So law of conservation of mass for the control volume, in most general case it is the compressible unsteady flow is what is written there. Now consider one by one. Let us consider this case now, that is compressible steady flow. If it is compressible and steady flow, then what will be the form? So now the only change you can see, it is a steady flow. If it is a steady flow, then this ddt or this quantity rho dv, this quantity will become 0. Okay, so this is what is for the steady flow. So this term will not be there in the expression, and the equation will take only this part. That means this quantity is equal to this quantity. Okay, so for compressible steady flow, the equation will take equation will be in this form. Rho Vn dAi will be equal to integration rho Vn dA. Okay, so this is what is the this is integration over the control surface inlet, and this is integration over the control surface outlet. So this is what is the compressible steady flow. This will be the form. Okay, now coming to the next case, that is incompressible flow. Okay, so if it is incompressible flow, in that case, remember we are considering the special case where the density is constant. Okay, so if the density is constant and the volume is constant, so the mass is constant, so this quantity is definitely not going to change. Okay, so the d of that quantity must be equal to 0 if it is incompressible flow. Okay, so for incompressible flow, this quantity will not be there, as well as this rho will come out of the integration because it is incompressible. We are considering as if density is constant. It is a special case of incompressible flow. So in that case we can at least write, for incompressible flow we can write in general that integration Vn dAi is equal to Vn dAo integration. Okay, where this integration is over the whole inlet, it is integration over the whole outlet. So this is basically the form of the incompressible flow. Remember one thing which is very important: for incompressible flow, this will be the equation of continuity or the conservation of mass, irrespective of whether the flow is steady or unsteady. Flow might be steady or unsteady, but if it is incompressible, then this will be the form. Definitely this will be the form, irrespective of whether it is steady or unsteady. Okay, so now coming to the last one, that you can see steady 1D flow. So let us understand what we mean by 1D flow. 1D flow means let us consider this is inlet to a control volume. Let us consider this is a tank, suppose. Okay, some water is there and this is what is the inlet, and through this inlet some fluid is coming into the tank. Now at the inlet, here you can see at the inlet the velocity or the density or the properties of the fluid may vary over this cross section. So through which in the control volume the fluid is coming, it is possible that across that area the property is changing. That means if we just zoom this portion, you see it is possible that at the both ends, because of the viscosity, because of no slip boundary condition, the velocity is 0. Maybe the velocity distribution is like this. Okay, that means the velocity is continuously changing across the inlet. Okay, or the density may also vary over this section through which it is coming in. Similarly, for the when it is coming out, when it is going out through that area also across the section, it is possible that the fluid properties like density, velocity, these quantities are changing. So if that is the case, rather which is the most realistic one, that the properties are changing across the section, then that is not a simple 1D assumption. The 1D flow assumption means we are assuming that over the cross section the properties are uniform. We are not considering that property can change over this cross section. Okay, so 1D assumption means as if the property is same across the section. So what we can do is that we can replace this actual variation by some average value. Okay, by some average value, and we can consider that average value as if uniform over the section. So this kind of assumption is called the 1D assumption. So the flow inlet and the outlet can be 1D. Okay, so one dimensional flow means one dimensional inlet, one dimensional outlet means this. I think this is clear. Okay, what we mean by the 1D. Now you see that what will be the form of the conservation of mass if it is steady 1D flow. If it is steady 1D flow, already we have seen for the steady flow, this is what is the form, right? For the steady flow, this is what is the form of the equation. But along with, if it is a 1D flow, then what will be the form? See, since across the section, across the inlet, across the whole inlet, this density is not going to change, or across the whole inlet this normal velocity is not going to change. So these quantities can be taken out of the integration. Okay, so what you can write is that suppose rho I is the density which is uniform over the whole inlet area AI, or Vi is basically the same velocity, normal velocity of the cross section across the whole inlet, and integration dAi is basically the total area AI. Okay, and that is equal to what? Similarly, if you consider the density across the outlet, maybe say rho outlet, suppose the velocity that is same over the section, say VO, and the total area maybe AO. Okay, so this will be the form of the equation under this assumption that the inlet is 1D flow. Okay, so these are the special cases of the laws of conservation that we can use in different problems. Now coming to the conservation of momentum, or the Newton's second law of motion. Okay, to get this from the, again we are going to use the Reynolds transport theorem to get this relation from the conservation of from the Newton's second law that we know for the system. So what is Reynolds transport theorem? Let us write once again the Reynolds transport theorem, that it is remember I am writing Lagrangian derivative to clearly distinguish it from the derivative generally used in case of fluid system. In case of solids, basically need not to write this capital ddt, material derivative. Ddt of momentum, suppose this is what is let us write first the Reynolds transport theorem, and then we'll see. Remember this B, the property that we have written, it can be a scalar quantity or it can be a vector quantity. Integration over the control surface over the output, property per unit mass rho Vn dA, you can also write dAO, beta rho Vn dA. Okay, so this is integration over dAO and this is integration over the total inlet. So this is what is the Reynolds transport theorem we know. Now for the conservation of momentum, or we can write is, we are considering this B as the momentum. Okay, we are considering B as the momentum of the system, and what will be small b? Small b is basically the velocity. Okay, so if we just simply replace this, then in the left hand side it will be what? Tell me, ddt of mv, and in the right hand side it will be del t of, remember this property within the control volume is basically the momentum within the control volume, right? So what is the momentum within the control volume? If you write it properly, so let us consider a very small volume. You just consider a very small volume within the control volume. Then what is the mass of that? The mass of that is rho into dv. And if you consider what is the momentum of this small mass, velocity at that point, that you have to multiply. So this is what is the momentum of that small mass. Now if you have to add the total momentum of the control volume, and for that what you have to do, you have to integrate over the whole control volume. You have to integrate over the whole control volume. So this is basically the quantity B control volume here in this case. Okay, and what else? Plus integration over the control surface across the outlet. Some momentum is going out, what is the rate of momentum that is going out? That is V, because beta is V, then rho Vn dAO, that you can understand, minus integration control surface over AI V rho, the normal component of the area, into dA. You are basically integrating over the AI for this one. Okay, so this is going to be the, if you directly apply the Reynolds transport theorem for considering the property as momentum. So now you apply the Newton's second law. What you know for the Newton's second law of the system, because this MV, because this part is for the system, and you know that this quantity, now you know that this quantity is nothing but what? This quantity is rate of change of momentum of the system, and from the second law, Newton's second law of motion, you know this quantity is nothing but the summation of force that is acting. Okay, so in the left hand side part it becomes the summation of force, and in the right hand side there is this unsteady part, and this is the rate of momentum that is coming into the system with the mass, and this part is the rate of momentum that is going out from the control volume with the mass. Okay, so this is a vector equation, clearly you can understand, and this vector equation again we can write as three scalar equations in three mutually perpendicular directions. Okay, so now if you see this equation, I hope you will understand. Here you can see the sum x component of the equation has been written, that is summation fx, and here this is the unsteady term. You see that here instead of v only the x component of velocity is written, and this is what is the small mass at a point, the velocity at that point is given, so this part, and this is the x component of momentum that is leaving through the area dA, and it is integrated over the whole outlet area, minus the rate of momentum that is coming into the control volume along x direction. So x component of that has been written. Similarly for the y and z component you can write. Okay, so this is what is the Newton's second law of motion written for the control volume. Now if you consider a special case of this, that Newton's second law of motion for steady state and 1D inlet and outlet. Now for the steady state, if we write the x component of the equation, then what will be that? Summation of fx. Since it is a steady state, so unsteady part will become 0. So we are not writing that unsteady part, only the rate of momentum coming in, going out of the system, that, and the coming into the system, that we have to write. So the rate of momentum, that is Vx component rho Vn dAO minus Vx into rho Vn dAI. Only this portion will be there, and if you, in a similar way, the other component equations also you can write, and it is along with the steady state, another condition is there, that is it is 1D inlet and outlet. If it is 1D, then we can also tell that this Vx or this rho or this Vn, these are basically the constant across the cross section. Okay, these are constant across the cross section. So what we can write is that this is equal to this rho Vn into dAO. If we club this quantity, then this quantity is nothing but what? This quantity, if you integrate this quantity is nothing but m dot, total m dot that is going out of the system, into Vx. Okay, minus uh, here it is basically m dot in into Vx. Okay, so you can write this expression in this form, or you can also write this in this form also, that is rho rho O Q Vx into, that is the Q out, minus rho I into Vx into Qi, where Q is the volume flow rate. Okay, where Q is the volume flow rate. This Q is nothing but AO into VO. Okay, and that is same as AI into VI if it is incompressible. So depending upon the situation, you can use those results and you can solve the problem. Okay, so for 1D, basically MO dot in and M dot in, these two quantities for a steady flow, if you see again the conservation of mass for the steady flow, and if it is 1D, then M dot in basically equal to M dot out. Okay, if you see the steady state 1D condition, if you put this steady state 1D condition in the conservation of mass, then you will find that the expression was rho O AO VO is equal to rho I AI VI. This was the conservation of mass for 1D steady flow, which is rho AV. This quantity is nothing but m dot in, right? And this quantity is nothing but m dot out. Okay, so m dot in and m dot out, these two are basically same. Okay, so what you can do is that here this quantity is Vx. You can write this as Vxo, and you can write this as Vxi. I think in that way these two can be distinguished, otherwise it will be difficult to, right, this is Vxo, this is Vxi. So what you can write also these as m dot O and m dot in, these are same, so you can take this m dot O or m dot in common, and you can write this as Vxo minus Vxi. So in this way you can find out what is the net force acting on the control volume along x direction by calculating this, and this m dot can also be written as either rho I AI VI or rho O AO VO. Okay, so this you can do. Okay, so this is what is the simplest form that you can use for many of the problem, and already in fluid mechanics, to finding out what will be the force acting on a bent pipe if fluid is coming in and flowing through that pipe and going out, or if you want to find out what will be the force acting if a jet is falling on a plate. So for that already in fluid mechanics course you have used this kind of form for steady state 1D form, and remember all these are nothing but the form used for the control volume of the conservation of momentum, or basically the Newton's second law, but it has written in the form of it has been written for the control volume. So it is very important when you are dealing with the fluid system, we are not writing that force is equal to rate of change of momentum, because force is equal to rate of change of momentum is applicable only for the system, not for the control volume. For the control volume, it is the first thing that you have to convert it in terms of control volume. What will be the form? And the form that you have just seen, this is the form, and for the steady flow, this is what is the form along x direction, and then you apply whatever you know, because this is the form of the Newton's law for the control volume. Okay, because in all the fluid mechanics problem you have to deal with the control volume, because we are dealing with the fluid substance, not the solid substance. So directly you cannot use the F is equal to mass into acceleration. Okay, that you can only use only if it is a fixed mass. That means for the system you can apply, but you cannot apply it for the control volume. Okay, now coming to the conservation of energy, or the first law of thermodynamics for the control volume. Okay, now first law of thermodynamics for the control volume, exactly in a similar way you can write. If you see, if you apply the Reynolds transport theorem, which is ddt of some property of the system is equal to del T of the property of the control volume plus integration over the control surface of per unit into rho normal component into DAO minus beta rho Vn dAI. Okay, so this is integrated over the net outlet, this is integrated over the net inlet. Now for the energy, conservation of energy, let us consider this B is the total energy of the system. B is E. Okay, and if V is E, then what is beta? Beta is say the specific energy, specific total energy, that means per unit mass what is the energy, say this is E, and you know already what is this E. This E consisting of its kinetic energy, right? So what is kinetic energy per unit mass? V square by 2. What is the potential energy per unit mass? G into Z. And what else? The internal energy per unit mass, say small u. Okay, so E is basically in thermodynamics already you know is basically consisting of the kinetic energy, potential energy and the internal energy. Okay, so if you simply apply it in the Reynolds transport theorem, then what will be the rate of change of energy of a system? So that will be ddt of E. Okay, and that is equal to del T of, if you consider a small volume, its mass will be rho dV, and the energy content of the control volume will be this. If you integrate over the control volume, then it will be this, plus it is E rho Vn dAO minus small e rho Vn dAI. This is integrated over the outlet, this is integrated over the inlet. So this is what is the form of the Reynolds transport theorem will take if you consider the property as the total energy of the system. Okay, so now if you apply the first law of thermodynamics for a system, that you know is what? That this rate of change of total energy is nothing but Q dot minus W dot. Okay, that you know. This is what is the first law of thermodynamics. I hope you remember that. Okay, so E dot is equal to this. So this quantity is nothing but the system E dot. Okay, remember this is for the system. So in the left hand side portion, using the first law of thermodynamics, become Q dot minus W dot, and the right hand side will be, as you can see, del T of integration E rho dV, exactly the same thing, need not to write, basically the same thing what you can see here. Okay, the only thing that you can write this work done part. So what are there in the work done part? This minus W dot, this work done can have the components like some shaft work may be there. Let us consider SH, WSH dot, this is the rate of shaft work. Okay, we are considering WSH dot is the rate of work done on the system. That is important, because let us consider this is a control volume and you are doing some shaft work into it. Okay, so what we are basically doing in this way, we are changing the sign convention. In thermodynamics, what you know as the sign convention, that if work done by the system, then we considered it to be positive. But here what we are doing, you see that we are considering minus W dot as one component is the shaft work, where shaft work is done on the system. Okay, so that is just the opposite sign convention we are using. Along with that, what are the other kind of work interactions possible in a fluid system? So other kind of work is possible, that might be because of the surface forces, like because of pressure. Okay, so you can consider, suppose because of the pressure and because of the shear force. Suppose this is the pressure, and here you can consider that some shear force is there, which is tangential to the surface, and the pressure which is normal to the surface, right? So because of the pressure, work done will be associated. Because of the shear force, work done will be associated. Because of the shear force, the work done associated, let us consider plus W shear, the rate of shear work associated might be like this, and because of the pressure, the work done associated. And you know that because of the pressure, the work done associated is also called the flow work. Okay, so flow work you can simply write by pressure into velocity into dA. Okay, so this is what is the quantity. If you just integrate it over the there might be some inlet section, outlet section. Let us consider we are integrated over the inlet, over the whole control surface, then that is considered as positive. You see, we are considering the flow work coming into the system as positive, and minus PVN DAO, that means the flow work that is going out is taken as the negative. Just the opposite sign convention that we are using, that you have to remember here. Okay, it's all about the convention, nothing else. So do not just, you have to be very careful. That is the only thing that you have to remember. So these are the different forms of work that is associated, that you have to remember. So remaining thing, I hope you will understand that we generally what we do, we take these components like pressure component, that means the flow work part. This is basically the flow work part that is there in the left hand side, and we take in the right hand side and club with this term. And if you club this flow work term with this, then basically this internal energy along with this flow work term will actually become the specific enthalpy term. Okay, so that is not very difficult to understand. I am just showing you the result, you will understand. Here you can see the work done components. Okay, and if you simply take these quantities here, these two, in the other side here, basically small e is written by kinetic energy, potential energy, and the internal energy. You can see now, if you just take this flow work terms on the other side and club with the inlet and the outlet integrations, then this U along with that P into what it was there, P into velocity into DAO, suppose this was one of the term, and here again Vn and DAO is there, basically P will remain there. Okay, so if you want to take rho common, then what you have to do, you have to just multiply by rho and you have to divide it by rho. Okay, so what I mean to say is that here you just make this adjustment. Here with P you just multiply by rho and you divide by rho, so that will help you to take common the whole this quantity, because this quantity is there along with E. So rho Vn A0 or rho Vn Ai, then this whole thing will be common and it will remain as P by rho. So this in term will become E plus P by rho. That what we are doing by just simply multiplying rho and dividing by rho. So it will not going to change anything. Okay, just it will help you to take common this term. Similarly for this term also, you just multiply by the rho divided by rho, then this term will be E plus P by rho, and E you know is this quantity. So now this quantity U plus P by rho, this can be replaced by specific enthalpy. Okay, so what will be the final form? Here you can see the final form, it will be like this. In the left hand side only these three forms of works will be there, and the flow work already you have taken in the right hand side, and it will merge with the U, and you see that U plus P by rho actually replaced by H. Okay, so that I hope you know by the time that you probably know in this form U plus P into specific volume is equal to H. Okay, the specific volume is nothing but the reciprocal of density. So U plus P by rho is same as U plus P specific volume. So anyway, so this is what is the form of the equation which is the used for the control volume. Now the special case, coming to the special case, if it is a steady flow, it is clear, if it is a steady flow, then unsteady part will become 0, nothing is going to change with respect to time. And if it is 1D inlet and outlet, inlet and outlet, then definitely across the inlet these properties are not going to change. Across the inlet these properties are not going to change, the density is not going to change. Okay, so you just simply taken out all these properties and your result will look like this quantity is nothing but what is m dot in. Okay, so m dot O into this quantity, that is maybe HO plus VO square by 2 plus GZO, like this. Okay, and this will be the plus term, and the minus term will be this quantity, that is mi dot into HI VI square by 2 and GZI. Okay, again if you apply the conservation of mass for the steady 1D inlet outlet, then m dot O and m dot I are also same, so you can take those also common. Okay, and on the other hand it will be this portion, will simply you just put that portion here. Okay, so this will be the form of the equation, and already you know this is what is the steady flow energy equation that you have seen in thermodynamics also. So these are the fundamental laws that we generally use for the control volume when we are dealing with the flow system or the fluid. Okay, but if it is a solid substance, then actually we do not require to convert the equations in terms of control volume, because in case of solids we can directly use the equations for the system. Okay, now we'll come to the subsidiary laws. Okay, there are subsidiary laws. The first one is related to the conduction, and which is Fourier's law of heat conduction. Remember that the subsidiary laws are not always valid for all substance. Maybe there are substances it is possible that for which the Fourier's law is not applicable, but most of the situations that we are going to deal with, or most of the cases, the Fourier's law of heat conduction is valid. But it does not mean that all the material that Fourier's law has to be valid. Okay, that is why this is the subsidiary laws. Okay, these are not like fundamental laws. This has to be satisfied. So these are laws like Hooke's law. Okay, Hooke's law, most of the materials showing, many materials showing Hooke's law, but there are many other materials they do not exhibit the Hooke's law, like Ohm's law. All these laws are this kind of laws. These are subsidiary laws. Those are important laws, but not necessarily they has to be valid. Okay, but for our all our calculations, we will consider that Fourier's law is valid. So what is Fourier's law? Fourier's law is that here you can see this quantity Q by A. This quantity is called conduction heat flux. Okay, so if you remember, what is Q? Q is rate of heat transfer. This is rate of conduction heat transfer here. So this is what is the rate of heat transfer. So this is rate of heat transfer. Rate of heat transfer, and A is the area across which that perpendicular to that area basically heat is transferring. So A is the area. Okay, so A is the area. Sorry, A is the area perpendicular to the direction in which the fluid is flowing, where N is the direction, N is the direction perpendicular to area. N is the direction perpendicular to the area. Okay, so this quantity Q by A, this quantity Q by A is called heat flux, is called heat flux, and the unit of this quantity is watt per meter square. SI unit is watt per meter square. Okay, generally it is symbolized as Q double prime. Okay, it is symbolized as Q double prime, and remember that this quantity heat flux is a vector quantity. Okay, now we have seen that what is the unit, what this particular quantity called heat flux, and this is the heat flux in the n direction. So heat flux in the n direction, n, if you consider this is the area, this is suppose the area, and this direction is the n direction. So if the heat is transferring in the direction n and perpendicular to the n, basically this is what is the area. Suppose this is the area through which heat is transferring. Okay, Q, that is basically the heat which is transferring. This is the area which is perpendicular to the n, is the direction in which it is transferring, and heat is transferring because of some temperature gradient. Okay, in that direction, n direction. Suppose here temperature is T1, here temperature is T2. Definitely T1 is greater than T2, and that is why heat is flowing in that direction. Okay, so this quantity del T del N is called the temperature gradient in the n direction. Okay, and finally this K is a material property. K is a material property called thermal conductivity. Thermal conductivity. Okay, so the Fourier's law of heat conduction tells that heat flux is proportional to the temperature gradient, and that proportionality constant is K. So here there should be one negative sign. There should be a negative sign. So basically, the Fourier's law is this: Q by A is equal to minus K into del T del N, and this negative sign indicates that negative sign implies that this del T del N, this is the quantity which is negative actually, okay, because heat is always flowing in a direction where the temperature is gradually decreasing. Suppose T1 has to be higher and T1 has to be lower, okay, so del T del N definitely a negative quantity. Okay, if heat has to be transferred in the n direction, then definitely along that n direction temperature will gradually decrease. So del T del N, so the temperature gradient in the positive n direction will definitely be negative. So to make this heat flux positive in that direction, this extra negative sign is required. So that because this del T del N itself is a negative quantity, multiplied with this negative sign, ultimately it becomes positive. So Q by A is a positive heat flux in the positive n direction. Okay, so this is what is the meaning of the different component of this particular equation. So this equation describes the Fourier's law of heat conduction. The statement is like this, that the heat flux is proportional to the negative temperature gradient. It's proportional to the negative temperature gradient, and the proportionality constant is K. K is the material property called the thermal conductivity. Okay, I think up to this much it is clear. Now coming to very specific way, in Cartesian coordinate system, what will this Fourier's law of heat conduction look like? I have already told you that heat flux is a vector quantity. So in the x direction, the heat flux is say Qx by A, or rather you can write heat flux in the x direction as Qx double prime, that is heat flux in the x direction, that is equal to minus K. K is a thermal conductivity, it is a small k, not capital K, into del T del X. Okay, similarly heat flux in the y direction is minus K into del T del Y, and similarly in the z direction it will be minus K del T del Z. But here again another thing is very important. This K here, you can see this K in the x direction and K in the y direction may not be same. Only they will be same if the material is isotropic in nature. That means the property at a particular point in any direction is same. That is what is called isotropic. Okay, so if the material is isotropic in nature, then this Kx and Ky they will be same. But in general, if you want to write, then actually you should put Kx and Ky. But if it is anisotropic, then Kx, Ky, Kz, these are same, because in most of the problem we are going to consider that material is isotropic. Okay, but when we are writing that Kx and Ky they are same, we are not considering that K might be different from one point to another point. Okay, Kx, Ky same, that does not means that at everywhere in that body K is same. we are not mean that the material is homogeneous. Okay, if the material is homogeneous, then each and every point the value of K will be same. But what we are telling that at a particular point, at a particular point within a material, in x direction, in y direction, this K may be different. Okay, or this K may be same for isotropic material. For isotropic material, at this point Kx and Ky are same, but this value of K that is same may be different at this point if the material is non-homogeneous. Okay, so we are considering homogeneous. In that case, this both of them will be same, that is K. Similarly, for the z direction you can write. Now for the cylindrical coordinate, in a cylindrical coordinate, let me take this one. Okay, for the cylindrical coordinate, what are the different direction? You know, r, theta and z. Okay, so heat flux in the r direction is equal to minus K into del T del R. Let us consider isotropic again. Q theta is equal to minus K into del T. If we write del theta, then definitely you can understand the temperature gradient unit is not going to match, so R del theta. Okay, and in the z direction is same as in Cartesian coordinate, minus K into del T del z. Okay, so these are the Fourier's law in different coordinate system. Similarly, you can write it for the spherical coordinate system also. Now let us try to get a feel of the magnitude of this material property, thermal conductivity. Now in case of solids, you see at the top, these are the pure metals. Pure metals having very high thermal conductivity like copper, silver. You see the thermal conductivity is in the range of 400. Okay, it is in the range of 400. You see if you see the room temperature, suppose the room temperature is here, so its value is around 400, very high value or more than that. Okay, for the pure metals. Aluminium you can see a bit less than the copper, but as you go to the alloys, gradually you see the value of thermal conductivity decreases. In case of stainless steel or in case of steels, it is in the order less than 100, maybe 80, 90 like that. Okay, so certain important thing that you have to remember, try to remember, not the exact values. For the exact values definitely you consult with the handbooks, but you should have some idea of what should be the magnitude of the thermal, what are the magnitudes of a thermal conductivity of a material. If it is a pure metal, very high. High means 400, 300, 200 in that order. If it is alloys, then its thermal conductivity will be less than the pure metals like brass. Okay, maybe in the order of 100 to 200. But if it is stainless steel or something like that, maybe it will be in the order of 20, 30, 40, 50 in that order. Okay, so just to give you some idea, this will help you. Now in case of solids, remember thermal conductivity is function of temperature. It is function of temperature, and you see that with the temperature the values are changing. Like in copper and silver, you can see with the increase of temperature the thermal conductivity decreasing. In case of aluminium also, thermal conductivity decreasing. Okay, but in general you can see the thermal conductivity is decreasing. Only in case of alloys, probably you are seeing that the thermal conductivity is increasing with temperature. Okay, you just remember that what are the main reasons of the thermal conductivity in case of solids. If you remember that it is the vibration energy that is propagating in the form of wave within the material. Okay, this is one of the cause. Another one, it is the free electron that also carries help in thermal conduction, right? So for the metals, since both are possible, that is why they are having the higher values. But at the same time, like diamond remember is a highly thermal conductivity of the diamond is very high, but diamond is not carrying any free electrons, so only the vibration energy that propagates very well within the diamond because of its crystal structure. Because of the structure of the diamond, almost there is no defect. If there is no defect, then the vibration energy propagate very fast without any resistance, and that is why in case of a diamond the thermal conductivity will be around 3 times than the copper or silver, more than 1000. Okay, so but diamond is not a very good electrical conductor because diamond do not have free electrons. Okay, anyway, so these are some idea of the magnitudes of the thermal conductivity. Now if you see in case of liquids and gases, you see the magnitudes of the thermal conductivity. The magnitude of thermal conductivity in case of water, you see it is in the order of 0.6. In case of ethylene glycol, it is in the order of 0.3, like that. Okay, engine oil, it is in the order of, so they are in the order of 1 or less than 1, maybe 0.1 to 1. Okay, but in case of gases, you see like carbon dioxide or the air, it is in the order of 0.04, 0.03. Okay, so you just observe that the thermal conductivity magnitudes in case of solids, you have seen it is in the order of 400, like that. Okay, then for the alloys it is in the order of 100. Then you see in case of liquids, it is in the order of 1, maybe 0.5, 0.6, like that. Then you see in case of gases, it is in the order of 0.05. Okay, so this is what is the variation of thermal conductivity depending upon the substance. Okay, so in case of gases, this is the order. In case of liquids, this is the order. In case of pure metals, this is the order. In case of non-metals, that is also very important, like bricks or like insulating materials. In that case also thermal conductivity is in the order of 0.5, 0.6, in that order. Okay, so certain idea of the magnitude of the thermal conductivity is very important. In case of liquids also, you can see that thermal conductivity is a function of temperature, and you can see that how with the temperature the thermal conductivity of the different liquids are changing. In case of gases, thermal conductivity is function of both pressure and temperature. Okay, so these are the certain informations, and you can easily predict that why in case of liquids and gases with the temperature thermal conductivity can change. Maybe chances that thermal conductivity will increase with the increase of temperature, because the chances of collisions is going to increase, because that is one of the mechanism by which in case of liquids and gases heat transfer by conduction takes place. So here you can get some idea of the values of the thermal conductivity. Here you see in case of glass it is 0.8, in case of brick 0.7, water 0.6, wood 0.17. In case of gases it is in the order of 0.026. Okay, so certain idea is always very important. And what is the unit of thermal conductivity? It is clear, you know the unit of heat flux, and the Fourier's law is telling this is what is the thing. So here it is watt per meter square. And what is the unit of the temperature gradient? The temperature gradient is either Kelvin or degree centigrade, because it is the difference immaterial. So Kelvin divided by some length, Kelvin per meter, okay, divided by length. So what will be the unit of thermal conductivity then? Then thermal conductivity will be unit of this divided by this. So remember, watt per meter Kelvin or watt per meter degree centigrade. Okay, Okay, so this is what is the unit of the thermal conductivity, and all these values that we have discussed are in that unit. Okay, let us end this lecture here. In the next lecture we'll see the convection. Thank you.